Like maybe we'll evolve more towards interacting with machines. That'll be our focus instead of fighting off the saber-toothed tiger.
But then there's creatures that evolve in the dark or underground or whatever that have atrophied or like basically no eyes at all.
And technology has kind of fixed that too. We have ways of overcoming that were not possible merely 20 years ago.
I mean, Beethoven went deaf and he kept writing. I don't worry so much about technology itself, like turning on us, but just like the people who are controlling it. Put my hand up on your hip when you deep sink dive. I deep sink dive. We deep sink dive. That was dumb. Anyway,
you're a dad, aren't you?
I'm a product of the 90s, and I'm Casey Rochford. And welcome to Kitchen Sink Microscopy, where hilarity will not always ensue. Not every dad joke can land on its feet, but like and share anyway, because there are real winner dad jokes in there somewhere.
I'm sure there will be some. And so I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and we might already be a little just nicely drunk.
I've only had 3 sips.
yeah. Well, and it's like serving size. This is a serving size to me. Yeah. So there you go. Don't forget, we write our own music, and such music is available on iTunes and Spotify and other places around the interwebs. So stick around to the end of the show. Timestamp down there, and you'll hear a new song. So if you want to skip all our blabbering, you can go down there and skip to that time and listen to it. Check out our website, ksmvidcast.com, for news, information, and more. So, Casey, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, fine. Whatever you say. Oh, sorry, I was distracted by my technology here. That actually reminds me that, anytime you look around, you see these zombies like staring at their phone, and I'm one of them. Like I lift my head just long enough to say, wow, look at all these idiots looking at their phone, and then I go right back to mine.
What were you saying?
And yeah, I mean, like, do you think technology is more of a, what's the saying, a boon or a bane to our existence?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, well, I mean, it depends on your definition of technology, because I mean, even building a stone hammer is technology.
Yeah,
I'm guessing you're referring more to the electronic side of technology.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like any advent of technology that has allowed people to receive entertainment from it has probably at such time received criticism from people that predated that era.
Yeah, no, you're very right. Yeah.
And with a decent amount of cause for concern, I suppose. Probably, like, in retrospect, getting a lot worse as we go on, right? It's more immersive.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure back in the day, it people told stories by firelight and stuff, and then the next generation they listened to the radio, and there were all those radio shows, which are awesome.
Still do that as a family or whatever.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing. Like, there was one radio for the whole household, and everybody gathered around and listened to The Shadow. By the way, check out those old radio shows. They're still great.
They're great.
They're amazing to listen to, even now. Better than the best movie. But then TV came along, right? So television and families still did kind of gather around the TV. I remember going to my grandma's house, and she had a TV on a rolling cart. And so we'd all get together and eat dinner at the table, and she'd roll the TV and we'd watch something while we're eating, which probably kind of conditioned me to associate eating with watching TV, which I still do this day. Like
Me too.
Yeah, if I sit down to eat something, I'll just pop up YouTube and watch something, because I don't know, it just feels right. But all the while, people, the previous generations, like, oh, it's making kids stupid. They're just sitting watching cartoons all day long. You know, you got to go out and play with your frisbees and hula hoops and stuff. You know, like and now, you know, with the advent of the internet, you have on-demand stuff, you have video games, the same kind of distractions, but just a different evolution of that technology. And I think that's normal for humans. I think escapism, a little bit of distraction, is a good way to center yourself, I guess. You know, that's what people do, and it's fine. Like,
well, it's not like it's devoid of education either, because I mean, when I was a kid, I learned how to put out a grease fire, or let's say how not to make a grease fire worse, from the Ghostbusters. Like, Jake and Tracy the gorilla walk into the kitchen, and Eddie is putting out a grease fire with water, and they're like, no, don't do that. And
well, yeah, and the Filmation Ghostbusters, specific, and that was a product, in fact, of the ninnies from the previous generation. All those PSAs at the end of, like, G.I. Joe and the Ghostbusters and whatnot, where they were saying, oh, it's just, they're selling kids toys, you know, there has to be some kind of valuable content there. So as usual, a bunch of people pressured the government to make changes, regulatory changes, and they did, and FCC, whatnot, you know, and hence you have those PSAs at the end of those episodes, which are actually kind of good sometimes not, but they make they're fun to watch today. But see, that shows, your experience shows that it worked. Like, you learned something valuable from that. And you know, technology, the same kind of technology that can be used for just entertainment, pure entertainment, you playing first person shooters or whatnot, can be used to educate people. You know, video games for a long time have had this kind of side job. I guess people have kind of always wanted to create the ultimate education tool. And thinking back to my childhood, I remember one of the greatest educational video games ever. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and Oregon Trail, which people still play to this day. The old school original one. Like, you learn
people
stuff.
Still die of dysentery.
Yeah. or your raft, like, collapses midstream cross and you drown. You have to buy oxen and ammo, and I mean, that was actually a really good educational tool. And I think video games, the Island of Dr. Brain, or the Dr. Brain series in general, it's another really good one. It kind of teaches you logic and problem solving in a fun way. That's kind of like a really good application of that kind of technology, which stuff like that didn't exist, obviously, in the age of the golden age of radio. And I would argue that the like Dr. Brain and Carmen Sandiego and stuff are superior tools for teaching people than the old ways, especially things that can respond to feedback, where you can, a system can analyze how you're doing, how you're learning, and then give you a like better data, I guess, or understand you a little bit more. Like, yeah, and that's kind of like an AI sort of thing, which is good. Like, it's a good way to learn, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, anything that can adapt to your own style automatically better.
Yeah, I mean, some would argue that, well, teachers could do that.
Well, yeah,
sure.
I mean, they could, but it, you know, not being one-on-one, it's vastly more difficult to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
If not impossible, really. Like when you're up there lecturing, you know, and 30 different people have different ways of taking that knowledge in,
or different levels of understanding. Like they're on completely, you know, they're at different stages of understanding of things. So it's like, how do you account for that? AI could totally do that. It could very easily quickly analyze whether, you know, you're like a beginner, like a total noob, or you have some experience or a lot of experience, and adapt very easily and in a personal way. Something that a teacher with, you know, 40 plus students probably can't do that easily. So as an educational tool, I think technology is definitely a good thing.
yeah. But do you think there's going to come a point where it won't evolve any further? Technology. The singularity.
Yeah. Well, maybe if we get into like a Matrix kind of situation, or like Wall-E or something like that, where we're kind of like completely beholden to the technology in a really significant way. I mean, I see that as kind of a long ways off as we stand today in 2021. I think there's a lot of growth, like room for growth. I mean, people love creating things and improving things and tinkering with things. And I think we'll be doing it for a long time. And maybe somehow all of that like will change us genetically too. Like it'll divert our evolution physically in a genetic way in an entirely new direction that wasn't possible without that technology. And I would venture to guess that's already happening today, where, you know, back in the days of hunter-gatherer people, and you had to be physically strong and be able to give birth to like lots of kids. You know, you had to be able to eat all kinds of weird shit. We don't need to deal with that now. We have virtually on planet Earth. I mean, you know, obviously it's not in a perfect state, but it's changing. We have virtually no need for gathering food, for dealing with wild animals and hunting stuff. You could be completely disabled, you know, and like, look at Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's a good point. Like health, you know, like technology has irrefutably made our health better.
Yeah. And that's what I wonder, is if a whole bunch of Stephen Hawkings can thrive in today's society, will we eventually evolve in that direction? You know, because maybe it's totally okay to have disabilities or not necessarily be perfect, right? Like maybe we'll evolve more towards interacting with machines. That'll be our focus, instead of fighting off the saber-toothed tiger or something like that. It'll be more about our minds, our ability to be quick dealing with technology, small things, or who knows? I mean, who knows what the future holds?
And like so many of us feel like that if we lost our sight, we would just have like the hardest time ever functioning.
Yeah.
But then there's creatures that evolve in the dark or underground or whatever that have atrophied or like basically no eyes at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, yeah, and technology has kind of fixed that too. We have ways of overcoming that were not possible merely 20 years ago. Even just society as a whole has kind of adapted to that. You've got the crosswalks that make the little boop 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 noises or like say things or something. You got the little bumps on the road. Like we've built systems to accommodate people who have shortcomings so will that change our evolution moving forward? Like, because that's how things work. If in olden days, if you couldn't see, you wouldn't be able to survive. Like, or it could be very unlikely that you would survive. Nowadays, you could do quite well for yourself. In most parts of the world, if you can't see, it's not really that big of a deal. You probably aren't going to be a painter, but you can survive and have children. And so
you could do Jackson Pollock mock-ups.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you would never be able to see them yourself. So,
I mean, Beethoven went deaf and he kept writing.
Mm-hmm. That is a remarkable thing because he was so good. Like he could hear the sound of the music that he was writing down on paper, that he knew what it would sound like when it was played.
Yeah.
Now that is an anomaly, though.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't lose all of it. Like he would, and this is why his later works got more like aggressive. It's like he would put his ear against the piano and like pound on the keys just to get that loud and vibration and stuff like that. He could kind of feel the sound waves. Almost,
yeah,
which you can do.
Yeah, you totally can. Especially if you have previous correlations. I mean, if you're born deaf, it might be harder to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, speaking of technology, though, there's just so many angles. I mean, I want to talk about Skynet at some point, because I'm sure it's going to be mentioned. It's going to be the first thing people think about of the dark implications of technology. Because the way I see things, like AI, robots and stuff, the Boston Dynamics stuff with the dog bots and everything, Spot and everything. It's like a lot of things for me. It is simultaneously terrifying and awe-inspiring. Like, I think there are so many awesome possibilities with robots like Spot. But at the same time, if it were weaponized, or if it were like self-replicating, or if you gave it just the right AI, it would single-handedly be able to wipe out the human race. Like, no problem. And that, I think, is the cautionary tale that science fiction is so good at conveying. Like, hey, maybe let's take it easy on some of this stuff. Not give it too much intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, with cameras everywhere and stuff. Like,
mm-hmm.
I don't worry so much about technology itself, like turning on us, but just like the people who are controlling it.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, it makes me laugh to think about like Isaac Asimov's laws of robotics and stuff, like, oh, which are kind of humorous if you read them and think about how it's even possible for a robot to know those things, or even for a human to program those things into a robot, especially back when Isaac Asimov was writing stuff like that. But yeah, the human element, I mean, looking at like Brave New World in 1984 kind of stuff, like I'd be a lot more concerned about people and their use of technology than I would about cyborgs or robots or something. In fact, I think the robots would be better companions than people.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know. I wouldn't mind having an Android around.
Yeah. Like and actually it kind of, there's back in the days of like the Jetsons, I think that was the 60s, I think, when that cartoon came out with Rosie.
Oh yeah.
The robot maid. Yeah. Like, and that, at the time when that was created, that was what people thought it would be like. They thought in the year 2000 we'd have flying cars and robot maids and butlers and like all kinds of cool tech and everything. And you look at, like, this is the whole problem I have with futurism, is you look at the year 2000, it kind of doesn't really look that different from the 60s, honestly. I mean, things are kind of the same. It's not like we're living in Cloud City or something like that. It isn't really that different. And I would say I don't think in 100 years the world's going to be much different than it is today. Like, maybe a little bit. Things change incrementally, and they change deliberately. Sure, you have your flashes of I guess I don't know, like fads, where everybody thinks they do these things for a while, and that kind of fades out and it goes back, and eventually everybody reverts back to things of the past, and the past is cool, and then the future is cool, and it changes very slowly. But what I was thinking when you were talking about having an Android in the house, what about sex bots?
I mean, it's not really any different than a blow up doll. It's going to be, more interactive, just like going from the TV to the cell phone.
Yeah. Well, sure. And they are actually, technologically speaking, they're improving by the day, to the point where they could be a replacement for that biological drive that people have. And I wonder about the implications of that. If people
replacement, though, I mean,
well, maybe not for like
conversation and still want to have sex, like,
maybe not for conversations and stuff like that, but to fulfill that desire, like the I guess intrinsic drive to have sex for, that we do because that's what nature tells us to do so that we can procreate. I mean, if we can like fulfill that, then it may change things. I don't know. That's kind of the thought that I have, is that technology will bring us in a, like, it'll deviate our evolutionary direction, the vector, in weird ways. And probably okay, like, as long as we still have the technology. That's the issue. If we deviate so far to become dependent on technology, like, we are helpless without the technology we've created. And then there's like a solar flare, right? So everything is completely wiped out. Well, we're extra helpless now because we don't have all those physical features or I guess the kind of cultural things that we used to have that would allow us to survive. Um, and I don't know, it might just take like a Carrington event to completely wipe out the human race at that point.
Huh. Oh, well, shit happens.
True. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would hope we'd be like colonizing other planets and doing other things. Um, but I mean that is a thing that people do. We've been doing it for millennia, like enhancing ourselves in various ways with technology. Um, it the things we have today, like the computers and implants and whatnot, are no different than when we discovered fire or started working with copper or whatever. You know, like it's the same kind of thing. We're improving our situation through the use of tools and our understanding of the world, and that understanding is ever growing, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm had a few too many beers, but I guess I don't really fear technology. There's a lot of people who do. You know, there's people who are like really worried about robots and stuff, and I think maybe a lot of it comes from science fiction, which is good. Science fiction is really helpful in kind of illustrating the like if you took the current state and rolled it over many times in a particular direction, what kind of scenario could play out. Like, hey, maybe we might not want to go down that path because we might make something that's going to destroy us all or something, or we're going to obliterate ourselves, or
We've come upon that with nuclear power and
mm-hmm.
you know, the hadron collider, and
Yeah,
you know, there's been events that could easily have wiped us off
yeah,
the cosmos.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, and you know, we're stepping up the game and developing like nanotechnology and things, and it, like, I guess in my mind, I don't see it as inherently bad. Like every technology has good uses. Like the spot bot, right? Like you first look at that and you see this robot like, you know, looks like a dog, and it looks really scary. But it's like, oh well, if you carry it forward to the possibilities, like it could be used for search and rescue, for going into dangerous places and doing things that we don't want to send people into. And actually, I envision a world where in the future, warfare is carried out between robots and not people. Yeah. More like a video game, right? Like,
Mechs.
say we go to war with China, right? And China just like fabricates a whole bunch of robots, and we do too. And we send them out in the middle of the ocean and they duke it out. And whoever wins, we're like, well, I guess you won, you know, like that would be good. But you know, there's medical uses. I mean, remember that customer that we had back when we ran the business, who sold medical robots, like surgical robots?
Huh.
We did like flyers and business cards or something, like graphic design for her. Huh. I think her husband did Swedish massage too.
Oh, okay. I remember him.
Yeah. So, but yeah, his wife sold surgical robots.
Huh.
And that's so cool. If you think about it, like you can, okay, it is a little terrifying because, you know, what if there's a glitch and you know, the surgeon is 1,000 miles away controlling the robot with the joysticks, and there's a scalpel coming down, and all of a sudden there's like, I don't know, a brownout or something. The scalpel's like and like just stabs you. Like, okay, I guess that could happen, but it could happen with a person too.
It could,
You
and
know?
and you might otherwise like the chances of that being probably fairly slim compared to the fact that like if you couldn't operate at all, you would just die a horrible, painful, slow death. You know, so
No, you're totally right. Yeah, and having the ability for a surgeon on the other side of the planet to operate on you is incalculable. And it would be easy to incorporate safeguards into something like that, so it couldn't go too fast or whatever, over penetrate, I guess. Giggity. But and you know, we always look at technology through the lens of today, as if the future technology is going to behave exactly like technology today does. And no, there's a little thing called engineering. We make mistakes, or we build things, we make mistakes. Sometimes injuries or deaths happen, but we collect all that information together and we build a template to make it better in the future. So with each generation, it's better and safer. Look at cars. Holy shit. Like, I mean, things don't happen in isolation, I guess. It's like it's built on all the past experiences that people have had. And I think robots are going to be the same way. And honestly, there will probably come a time where I would much rather be operated on by a robot than a human being or a team of humans.
oh yeah.
And maybe we'll get to the point where you don't even have to have a human controlling it. AI could potentially, you know, machine learning and everything might be able to, there could be like algorithms and stuff like that. It's like, oh, hey, this person has whatever, this tumor or something, and it has to be removed. And the robot's like looks at things and just like, okay, here's what we got to do. It administers anesthesia in the exact proper proportions, which anesthesia is a huge problem as far as confusion and dosing and all that stuff. So computers would make that better. You know, and maybe it like absolutely precisely cuts things out. And if there's ever a mistake, that's cataloged and used for future reference. Like, hey, whoa, wait a minute, you know, improvements to the system. And eventually it's almost infallible. And as we know, humans are anything but.
Infallible.
Exactly. Well, it wouldn't be a KSM if we didn't have a Red Dwarf reference there.
Yeah. Huh. Well, then there's art too. Like our music wouldn't be possible without technology.
Yeah, that's a good point. And sounds that could never be replicated. Like, if all we had were stringed instruments and wind instruments and stuff like that, there's no way we could create the sounds that we can create with computers. And so there's benefit there. And there's going to be purists who argue, well, that's not real music because you're clicking things, MIDI, you know, hitting things on a keyboard with MIDI and stuff like that. Well, that's not real music. Like, well, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
The real question is, does it move you? Does it affect you emotionally? Do you feel something? And if you feel something, who fucking cares if it's real music? I mean, there may come a time where, well, in fact, I think that time is already here, where there's performers performing music that are either robots or holograms or the entire, all like The vocals are synthesized.
The Chuck E. Cheese band.
Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese. You know, people are like getting those things, like buying them and like modifying them to do their bidding.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there. I mean, I don't know. I look at it this way: like technology, like a lot of things, it it has its pros and cons. It's like a double-edged sword. Like it could do good, and it can do bad. It actually has nothing to do with the technology. It has everything to do with the people using it.
Yes.
That's I think an important thing to understand.
Then there's the shitty part of technology. I see my signal has been getting lousy again, getting all choppy.
Oh shit.
I don't understand that crap. Like, it's just Zoom.
Aren't you hardwired now?
Yeah.
So how? I'm telling you, man.
DSL.
It's like the old extreme gaming days, like CommuWeb. Um, I remember back then, we were supposed to have like a whatever T1, I think is like 1 point something megabits. We were supposed to have that up and down. And I remember once more layers were added on, I went to Google, and just loading the Google logo took like 25 seconds. It was like, and I'm like, what the hell? We're supposed to have badass internet. I mean, you know, for like early 2000s, it should be quick, but this is like slower than dial-up. Like I might as well have my old 2400 baud modem from like 1986. Jeez. Ugh. Man. There's a fly flying around here. Little teeny tiny fruit fly, and it's really getting annoying.
Yeah, the government drones.
I was gonna say it actually could be a little nanobot.
I do get fruit flies even if I don't keep any fruit in the house or anything. Like clean up all the food really well. Like fruit flies still come in and I don't get it.
Well, maybe they come inside looking for fruit and then get trapped, and so they're like panicking or something.
They only live for like a day.
Yeah, that is weird.
And it's
So
like,
how can they be there for like multiple days?
If they're not eating anything? Yeah, like
the hell? Maybe it is. Maybe they are machines. Huh. Well. I mean, I don't want to get into the whole simulation theory. We should probably talk about that at some point because that's really, really interesting. We should probably stick to robots or technology in general. Yeah, I think so. I feel optimistic and terrified at the current state of our technological evolution. You know, like you'd mentioned before, nuclear weapons and stuff. Like nuclear power, that's one thing, but the atom bomb or the hydrogen bomb, or even worse, the neutron bomb, it was speculated. I probably mentioned this when we talked about it before, that there was a probability that when they detonated, like when they did the Trinity test, that nuclear bomb could ignite the atmosphere and just burn it off. And they did it anyway. Like, that's the thing that concerns me, is like we now have the possibility, like we have the technology to destroy everything. Like, back in say the 1300s or something, like the worst we might have had like warfare technology wise would be like, I don't know, a catapult that could throw some, like a flaming cow at something. That might be it. But now we really are, like, especially with how many nukes we have earthwise, not just the US, like on the whole planet, there's enough nukes to extinguish all life in seconds or minutes, probably. Like, that's terrifying. That's really scary. And yeah, nobody seems to really worry about it. And maybe that's for the better. Like, don't worry about it. But it's still scary to think about. And we're developing even more stuff. Like, biological weapons and things. And we're constantly working on better ways of killing each other, which fucking is honestly stupid. Like,
Yeah.
we should be working on ways to solve big problems and get along and, things like that. But, there's the budgets go to the militaries. So they get all the dough and they start developing things. And of course, here we are.
Money, power, and religion.
Yeah.
That's all it ever comes down to.
Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, that's not to say, I really love military hardware, like battleships and tanks and rocket launchers and stuff like that. It's freaking cool. But I love it in like a G.I. Joe way, where, in my mind, it's the whole kind of, you've got all this technology, you've got the ability to like obliterate cities and stuff, and you fire your rockets and shit blows up and it looks really cool. But then you fire in lasers and then you get close to each other and then it's a fist fight. You just like punch somebody. Like, that's how it should be. Like, eventually it should come down to that. Man. I mean, ideally it ought to be a situation like, okay, a guilty pleasure for me is a movie called Robot Jocks. And I actually think, okay, it's kind of a crappy movie as far as like budget goes and acting. It's kind of but the concept is really cool. The idea is that this is in the 80s, so of course Cold War. This is very Cold War, a very Cold War connected movie. And the idea was there was a nuclear exchange between the Soviet Union and the United States, and we almost destroyed everything. So they made an agreement like, hey, let's not let that happen again. So if there's a conflict, we'll take our mechs and duke it out in this arena, and it'll be televised, and there's going to be an audience, and whatever the outcome, we just agree, like it's kind of an agreement, like, okay, whichever mech wins, that conflict is resolved in favor of the winner. Which I find to be kind of like a really cool idea. That's kind of the future of warfare in my mind.
I think the only problem with that is that's kind of an honor system sort of thing, right?
Well,
like,
yeah.
Like the only reason like wars really come to an end throughout history is because you come to a point where you capitulate to preserve your own life or to mitigate damages already done and stuff like that.
Or you realize that, like, oh yeah, the situation's hopeless. Like, we might as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So if there's no actual like dire consequence to a a resolution like that, where it's just like, oh well, good game, let's shake hands and then you can run our country as you please.
Well,
like,
I mean, it works for sports, so why can't it work for anything else?
And, well, it works for sports because they won't die, or they won't be like losing their freedom, or things like that. It like there's no actual like real life or death ramifications.
Well, I would imagine in this kind of scenario wouldn't be that, oh hey, by the way, Mecha Hitler wants to commit genocide against your entire country, so hey, go out and duke it out in the arena, and if he wins, well, you're all gonna die. I don't think that's gonna happen. It could be like territorial trade disputes, things like that, and maybe in the context of the movie, it was very very recent that there was a very awful war that happened, and people remember that, and they're like, yeah, we're not going to let this happen again. And so the public was very in favor of such a system, and so maybe it could only work for a few generations before people start changing things.
Yeah, I mean, the sad state of things is what the public is in favor of is not really what the government gives a shit about.
Okay. Yes,
but
you're very correct.
We're venturing toward government complaints. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on that. Yeah, let's dial back on that one. We'll go down that rabbit hole another time. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a lot more we could talk about here, but I think we really covered kind of a lot of subjects.
Yeah,
within a lot of different angles, at least the big ones:
entertainment, health, art,
yeah,
war,
Skynet. Yeah. Well, yeah, Skynet would be the government and warfare. Like, that's the thing. This is the thing that like infuriates me about government and warfare, is as far like the powers that be live in the ivory tower, right? They are not on the front lines, but they're making the decisions that the people on the front lines have to carry out. And as far as the people up there in the ivory tower are concerned, it's like pawns. It's like chess pieces. They're just numbers, they're not actual people, but they are people. Not just your own soldiers, but the soldiers those soldiers are killing are people too, with their own families. Like, oh yeah, okay. I digress as usual. We should probably let's avoid that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to go off on a tangent. Yeah, so I think we've covered some kind of a broad swath of topics there, like that. Yeah.
So if you'd like to hear some technological music, you might be hearing it fading in right now. Even it'll be nestled in at the end of the episode.
Oh yeah. Would it be nestled in if it was at the end?
Nestled out.
Nestled out.
Nestled around.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good to me.
It's nestled around the episode like a warm goo-filled sack of technological music.
This is going to become a porno, isn't it? Oh, man. Well, yeah. So,
and when the episode reaches climax.
Okay, I'm going to have to be alone for a minute. So let's wrap this up.
Well, thanks for deep sink diving with us.
Yep.
And,
robot porn. Yeah, so thanks for deep sink diving with us. Yeah. And you got any closing words, Casey?
bye.